Welcome to the Histories of Northamptonshire podcast series, and this episode number 62. Recorded on location, each episode tells the story of one of the many and varied objects which are the focus of the exhibition A History of Northamptonshire in 100 Objects. The exhibition runs at the Northampton Museum and Art Gallery between the 20th of September 2025 and February 2026. Selected by local individuals, heritage groups and the museum's own curators, each object tells a different story from the county's past. For this particular episode of the Histories of Northamptonshire in 100 Objects, I've come to a building because it is the building itself which is the object represented in the exhibition by a model. I'm not quite in Weedon itself, but I'm very close by. And I'm joined by two people for whom this building is very important, maybe from slightly different perspectives. Hello, who are you and what is your involvement with this place?
Hello, I'm Steve Larner and I've been a volunteer guide here for 3 years.
And you, sir, are?
My name is John Johnstone. I am a centre volunteer.
And I believe you're a local lad as well, born and bred almost within earshot of this place.
Yes, I have always lived in Weedon, so this depot has been the next door neighbour.
The word is out, but what kind of a depot are we talking about? Steve, I've already said that the object is the building in which we are sitting. We're in the basement of the building. Ordinarily it's a small theatre space. But what is the Weedon Depot and what was its role?
Well, the Weedon Depot is the shortened name of the Royal Ordnance Depot of Weedon Bec. And it dates back to the early 19th century when we were at war with France and Napoleon, and the government and the Ordnance Board wanted to centralise where it stored muskets, artillery and gunpowder. Gunpowder was very heavy, and in the period we're talking about, which is at the end of the 18th century and the beginning of the 19th century, the only real safe way it could be transported was by boat and by canal. The canal that actually runs underneath this building was an arm of what was called the Grand Junction Canal at that time, and that had opened in the late 1790s, and it ran between London, where the gunpowder mills were sited, and Birmingham, which was the centre of the gun-making industry.
How big a community would have served this particular depot?
The army arrived in the early 1800s. The population of Weedon was under 200, with most people employed on farms and some serving the coach route on Watling Street, on which Weedon is also situated. Watling Street, which was the main trunk road in England, was for transporting, as far as the army were concerned, horse-drawn artillery, cavalry, and soldiers could march along it. But in the time we're talking about, one horse could pull a ton of goods on a road, but could pull 40 tons on the canal. The Weedon Depot grew from what was a new technology. Canals were the motorway and railway and airports of their time, carrying nearly all heavy goods in Britain. But just as they were getting going in England, roads were still very important, and of course most goods were transported still by sea.
John, just how big a space physically was it in comparison to Weedon itself?
The depot itself, in its heyday, covered 152 acres, which is about the equivalent to 26 fields.
What did the local people think about living so close to all of those arms and all that explosive as well?
Well, I think it was generally accepted. Apart from any sort of issues on living next door to somewhere like this, even with its explosive content, it provided secure employment and economic stability for the area. The only alternative really to working here would have been farm work, where you couldn't really earn enough to live.
You grew up in this area. Can you trace your family's history back through the generations to when perhaps this was an active establishment?
Yes, I was third generation for my family to work here. My granddad and grandma were here, which is First World War era. Mum and dad were here. Mum was a civilian ordnance worker, as I was. Dad was one of the 2 leading firemen for the Ordnance Fire Service.
And you say you worked here. What was it like to work here? What did you do?
Amongst other things, we were weapons checkers. We had to verify equipment as fit for further use. Because of the nature of the place, it was a very, very closed community, and it became almost a family business for local people, and the depot was never seen as just a job.
If you drive past it, there are lots of high walls. Did that extend to you not talking about what you did? Much as in the Second World War, people at Bletchley Park didn't talk about what they did either.
No, we didn't talk about what we did. And because we signed the Official Secrets Act, if you were convicted of saying what you did in this depot, you faced a jail sentence under the Official Secrets Act.
Nevertheless, at the sharp end of things, you were making sure that things that were meant to go bang would go bang. That was the work.
Yes, exactly. Everything had to work first time, every time. Soldiers' lives in an action situation, their lives depended on that weaponry working.
So in a sense, the taking of life could also have meant the saving of life too.
Yes.
Steve, this place clearly had more than one lifetime. The place now is not what it used to be. Why is that? Why didn't it continue to have a militaristic connection?
The peak of the depot's activity was really D-Day, when it supported the landings by equipping the follow-up troops after D-Day itself. And that was in 1944. Even before the start of the Second World War in 1939, this place was long in the tooth. The great storehouses had been there since 1814, when it officially opened, completely unsuited to any kind of modern use. As the government prepared for the war that was coming in 1939, it began looking at more modern sites at Bicester and also Donington in Gloucestershire. They had proper rail links. We had a rail link, but it was a limited line. And so they could also see that these sort of places would be bombed, and we were sitting duck. So by 1944, we were supporting the army in Northwest Europe, but then as the war wound down in Europe, we were still supplying guns and equipment to the Far East. After the war, we started, and John was doing this at the end, we began to bring in all the millions of guns that we'd sent out, bringing them back here to be checked and to redistributed, go back to our army, which was getting much, much smaller. Weedon withered on the vine then, compared to the now massive logistics that had supported World War II.
The buildings still remain. This gatehouse that we are sitting in, it is still the guardian of the estate. It is still directly over the top of the canal that saw so much industry, now somewhat overgrown. Why should this building be part of the exhibition? What does it say about Northamptonshire?
People who visit the depot as it is now, they can see the 20 acres that was built in the Napoleonic period. We've lost over 100 acres, but it's still a spectacular site. It is the oldest part, and it has a magic of Georgian architecture. The canal, which still has water in it that runs through the site. The buildings that had been put up during the Boer War in 1900, the Edwardian period, the buildings that went up to serve the First World War, and there are still remnants of the ones that served the Second World War.
It's fascinating that a space like this, which is as far away from any coastline in the United Kingdom as you could find, was served by the waterways. Without them, this place may never have existed. Equally, with hundreds of years of history behind it, Northamptonshire, which saw, relatively speaking, quite a quiet Second World War, wasn't targeted at this space. This space now is perhaps a ghost of its former self. Let me ask both of you the same question. What would you like the future of the Weedon Depot to be, given that it has an illustrious past?
Well, I would love to see this depot continue as it has done for all the years. If we lost the rest of what we have now, it would be a part of history entirely gone, which would be a sad loss for the county.
Steve, what about you?
The description of it being a ghost of itself is not quite true, because it is still a living place. It's now run as a private business, but is open to the public. And even during the week, it's very active. I think if it returned to the days of the 1980s and 1990s, when the gates were shut, no one got in, no one knew the story, that really would be a tragedy. It has amazing potential, and many of our visitors, like us, will stand at the top of the stairs, looking up the canal at the buildings on a sunny day, and just say, this place has to be developed properly and go forward so that the story can be told.
It is a very significant part of Northamptonshire's history, a militaristic one, maybe a different kind of peacetime future for something with such an illustrious past. Steve, John, thank you for talking to me.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this Histories of Northamptonshire podcast. If you would like to find out more about the objects or listen to other episodes in the series, go to www.northamptonmuseums.com. Alternatively, you can visit the Northampton Museum and Art Gallery, where you can see the A History of Northamptonshire in 100 Objects exhibition for yourself. The Histories of Northamptonshire project is funded by Arts Council England as part of the National Portfolio Programme.